Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
Hey, welcome to a live episode of Beyond the Pod, as always brought to you by SodaStick.com. Brandon Mileski here, along with Golden Gopher great Pat Micheletti. Hi, Pat. How you doing?
Good, Brandon. Good to see you.
Yes, it is a live episode tonight. We're taping this on, or doing it live, not really taping it, at 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. So we can get live comments, questions, complaints from anyone that is watching us on the KFN social channels on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, or YouTube. So tonight, Pat, obviously with the Wild already now we know who their playoff opponent is. We know when the schedule is. They're taking on the Dallas Stars. And I'll be honest, Pat, as we were having kind of the debate the last couple of weeks of would you rather face Colorado or Dallas, you know, my thought was I'd rather avoid the superstars and the Stanley Cup cred that Colorado has. And, you know, they're not the same team and they've got some injuries with Landeskog and stuff like that. The more I kind of digest even further into this Dallas team, though, they might not have McKinnon-Makar level star, even though Robertson's not that far away. But they are a pretty complete team. There's not really a lot of weaknesses there. They get scoring from everywhere in their lineup. Defensively, they've been good all season long. Their goaltending's been great. Face-off, special teams, like they don't have a lot of flaws.
They're well coached. They have depth. They're not unlike the Wild, to be quite honest with you. Goaltending is good. They have a good decor. They don't give up a lot of goals, obviously, because Ottinger might be the second best goaltender in the National Hockey League. They don't wow you. I mean, there are warts there on their team. I look at Wyatt Johnson, for example, going to be a great player, going to turn into a superstar. This is his first Stanley Cup playoff. He's 19 years old. He's going to find the playoffs like Boldy did, like Kaprizov did, a little different. They can talk about it all the time, but until you play in it. So I think, there's a guy like that, for example.
Couldn't you say the same about Philip Gustafsson then, if he ends up getting the start game one, right?
Oh, sure you could. Yeah.
I mean, and Dallas is they're littered with guys who've had playoff experience. So.
Yeah, that's true. But if that's a guy, if that's a guy in your top six that you're counting on to score, well, let's see how he handles it. Maybe he'll be fine. You can say the same thing about Gustafsson. You can say probably, I just look at their lineup. They added a Max Domi. Okay. He's fine. They added Dadonov. He's played pretty well for them. And you can compare that to the Wild picking up maybe Johansson and a Nyquist and Sundqvist. So I guess my point is I don't see a lot of differences in the teams. And again, I'll go back to what I said. I think the West is wide open. So I really didn't care who the Wild started out with in this first round.
Well, it's interesting you bring up the trade acquisitions, Pat, because if you look over the course of the entire season, like statistically, Dallas is better than the Wild in a lot of areas.
Yeah.
But these two teams haven't played each other since February 17th. So since the trade deadline, when Dallas made those moves that you mentioned, and the Wild go out and get Johansson and Klingberg and Sundqvist and Nyquist, they haven't played each other. And the Wild are a different team since that moment. So that's kind of the way I kind of look at it is, like I said, I could go through all the stats right now that would just kind of wow you about Dallas, right? 7th in the NHL in goals, 3rd in goals against. Their power play 5th in the league. Their penalty kill 3rd in the league. They are the number 1 face-off team in the league. And I think that's going to be an interesting storyline in this series because the Wild have struggled against teams in the playoffs that do much better in the face-off circle than them. And Dallas is one of those teams. Their goaltending has been great. So you look at all those stats, that looks like a legit, almost elite NHL team. But
Yep.
the Wild team that put up the numbers they did, they've been completely different since the trade deadline, and that was even without Kirill Kaprizov for most of it.
Right, and they finished 5 points behind them. 5 points separated these two teams. Dallas wins their last 6 in a row.
Well, the Wild,
like that.
the Wild mailed it in the last couple
they
games,
did.
so it's
And
not even really a 5 point.
So really, I think it's going to come down to execution in this series. Who potentially can get the 3 goals. We'll see a night where there are more goals scored, but I think it's going to be awfully tight in this series, just on the goaltending alone. And we still don't know who's going to start game 1, do we? Unless you know something.
Dean Evison keeping it a secret today. I can't imagine they don't go with Gustafsson here, Pat. He's been the better goalie throughout the season, and I also think it's easier to bring the veteran off the bench if something goes wrong with Gustafsson in the first game or two. I think it's easier to have Fleury come in and try to calm things down than it might be in terms of pressure.
Yeah, no,
in the middle
that's
of the series.
That's a great point.
I would be shocked if Gustafsson didn't get the net game 1.
Yeah, I guess it wouldn't surprise me either. I'm okay with either one of them. I think both are going to play anyhow at some point in time. So I guess we'll have to see that. Kevin and I talked today about, and we talked to Billy Guerin about it, about opening up on the road, and to me that's no big deal. I really think it might be easier to open on the road than it is having home ice advantage. Just the pressure of winning game 1 at home is really, really difficult, and I think there's going to be a lot of pressure on Dallas to win game 1, and and maybe the Wild can play a little looser, or don't feel the pressure, and can steal that first game.
All right, we're pleased to be joined. We do have a special guest tonight, Pat. I know
we do.
You already had to deal with him for 2 hours earlier today. I asked him earlier in the week to help out, and he's like, "No, I got family stuff going on. I can't help you out." So apparently, you peer pressured him into showing up.
I tried.
He's live from his garage, which is probably where his wife wants him. It is Kevin Falness from the Minnesota Wild Radio Network. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, gentlemen. I did get a lot of peer pressure, first of all. Second of all, the family stuff. No, I got a lot of grief from the elder Micheletti. So
yes,
it's good. We went to dinner. It took a long time, actually. We had a hockey game in Orono. We lost. We went and celebrated at Bunny's in St. Louis Park, and now here I am in all my naked glory.
Well, I'm sure you already chatted with Pat about this for 2 hours earlier today on the Fan, but we were just breaking down this Wild Stars series. What are your overall thoughts on the matchup against Dallas as opposed to Colorado, and what do you kind of see in this series?
I'm excited for it, first of all, because it's different than the last couple of weeks where it didn't mean anything and it felt like it. The whole time I was saying, do whatever you can to avoid Colorado. And now here it is. And I'm thinking Jake Ottinger. I'm thinking Jason Robertson, Rope Hintz. I mean, this is a loaded team that's very good. And they only finished second place by a fraction of an inch. So it isn't going to be easy. I don't even know if you got the lesser of two evils, but it might be the team you match up better against than Colorado overall. And we'll see where it goes.
Let me ask you, can I ask a question to both of you? Do you think either of those teams did not want to face Minnesota in the first round?
Well, I'll answer 2 weeks ago. I bet they felt a lot different than they do now, considering the Wild lost 5 of 7 coming into down the stretch.
Yeah,
not as hot as these other teams were.
Can't worry about the 5 of 7 when they played their East Coast team.
All I know is Colorado had a game against Nashville and they didn't mail it in at the end of the season. They wanted to win. Now, is that just to win the division or make sure you're going into the playoffs feeling right about yourself? But for a team that's had some injury stuff going on and can't afford to lose anyone to injury, they played to win that game. So that would lead me to believe, hey, we'd rather face Seattle than Minnesota. Kevin, interesting storylines with this series because obviously – I don't know if you know this, but the Dallas Stars used to be here in Minnesota. They used to be the Minnesota North Stars. You've got Ryan Suter against the Wild. You've got John Klingberg against the Stars, and I believe his first game in a Wild uniform against Dallas, at least. As you mentioned, Jake Ottinger, he's from Lakeville. Matt Zuccarello had a cup of coffee with Dallas. And then you had, a couple years ago, we had the Kaprizov-Robertson battle for the Calder Trophy. So a lot of storylines here for a first-round playoff series.
You're missing one.
What am I missing?
Former Dallas star, Bill Guerin.
Oh,
right,
well,
Pat?
he played for like 10 teams, so how am I supposed to?
Exactly. That's a good point. Yeah, there's a ton of angles here. No question about it with the local. I think that's the biggest thing, though. We love Gustafson, who, by the way, I'm sure you'll get into, in my mind, is the game one starter. But Jake Ottinger is a whole lot different than dealing with Gorgiev. I think Gorgiev would have been a piece of cake compared to this kid. That kid is a stud. And the fact that he happens to be a Minnesota native is just icing on the cake. But that's going to be a big thing to have to deal with when you talk about Minnesota connections. Jake Ottinger between the pipes is phenomenal for them.
Well, and Pat, last year, even though Dallas lost their first-round series against Calgary, Ottinger was brilliant in that series,
yes.
right? I mean, if you remember, they were losing games 1-0, 2-1 all series long. He was, and I remember tweeting either during Game 6 or Game 7, I go, Jake Ottinger is going to end up being the greatest goalie in Minnesota hockey history.
I think he had I think he had like 50 saves a game. I mean,
he was brilliant. So
yeah.
But there's a guy he's experienced it, was great. Like, pressure ain't going to get to him in this series.
No, he's been through it. And so you got to wonder, did Dallas change their style of play? How leaky are their D? I know, are the Wild going to get the opportunities, and will they be able to capitalize on them? And with the two lines now that Minnesota has, and now you can even add, a third. Granted, Eriksson Ek is not going to be part of game one. Glad to see he skated today. Can the Wild generate enough offense?
I was just going to mention Joel Eriksson Ek. As I mentioned, this is a live Beyond the Pod, so you can shoot us a comment or shoot us a question, and we'll try to get to some of them. Rusty AF, who he tunes in quite a bit, so we appreciate his loyalty.
Thank you,
to this podcast.
On your show, comment would be like, AF, what's that?
He says, if we can at least keep it even until Ek comes back, if he does, I like our chances. Pat, as you mentioned, Eriksson Ek skated on his own this morning. I have a feeling this is one of those series where he's coming in hurt and he's just going to play at some point. And
yep.
But when I do look at where Dallas has an edge over Minnesota, it's hard not to look at the center position, guys. It's always been a weakness for Minnesota, especially in the faceoff circle. And now, assuming you don't have Joel Eriksson Ek for a portion of the series, you're going Ryan Hartman, you're going the newly paid Frederick Gaudreau. Sam Steele's probably going to slot in on your third line, and Dewar. I mean, that's a bit of concern when you're going against the best faceoff team in the National Hockey League.
No doubt about it. And that's what we've been talking about for 2 years, or maybe 3, or maybe 4. That the inability to get that number 2 center or number 1 center.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, Ryan Hartman's going to have to play his butt off in this series. And if he does, that means Zuccarello is going. And that Kevin brought that up today. He's got to get going. I mean, he's got to be a factor in this series, because they're going to hound Kaprizov, and that I think Zuccarello is going to be a big key, especially because he plays the power play, and the power play has been sputtering, not great, not horrible, but in a low scoring, what I think will be a low scoring series, you get the opportunity on the power play, you've got to execute.
To that point, I don't think it's fair to judge Zuccarello or the power play until you see Kaprizov back in there for an extended period of time. He missed those 13 games with injury, in and out of the lineup in the final stretch because of resting guys, which I think was the absolute right idea. We saw it happen to Joel Eriksson Ek in a game that, at that time actually probably did mean something, but blocks a shot on a penalty kill from Evgeny Malkin, and now you're missing him at the most important time of the year. So I'm not worried about Zuccarello or the power play. until we get Kaprizov back out there, and then we can actually judge it with 97 out there as well.
But I mean, it's also, you have to be concerned about, you haven't had any chemistry going on with this power play for quite some time because Kaprizov's been out. Like how many power plays has Kaprizov played with John Klingberg, right? I mean, it's very little. So you're kind of trying to learn, and Eriksson Ek, if not in the series, I mean, he's the only guy who can really give you a net front presence. They've been playing Johansson out there the last couple games, and I like Johansson, but it's now just a bunch of guys on the perimeter, and you don't have a net front guy. Boldy's got to take your face-offs, and he's not going to win as many face-offs to start with the puck in the offensive zone. So, I get that having Kaprizov back full-time is going to be a huge boost, but there's still a lot of concern here, I think, with the PP.
And that's what tells me that you have to simplify it. You have to have the mindset of a lot of shots and a lot of crashing of the net, and hope for a rebound. Those type of goals in playoff time. Both you guys know, very rare that you get pretty. I mean, guys are working too hard, and the lanes are closed. The passing and the shooting, and so you have an opportunity. You got to get it on net, and get a rebound or one of those tough goals and go from there.
All right, guys, an interesting storyline maybe coming up here, and is you're going to have a guy, speaking of chemistry, you're going to have a guy who's maybe played just 2 games, jump in game 1 in the playoffs, and Brock Faber. At least today at practice, he was in John Merrill's spot on that third pairing along with John Klingberg. He's looked pretty darn good the first 2 games. He hasn't looked out of touch to me. Obviously moving Klingberg to the left side is a little dicey, given that he's had some issues in terms of turnovers and letting guys behind him for odd man rushes and breakaways. But it's hard to argue the way Faber has looked, and even specifically John Merrill hasn't looked very good down the
I'm going to make a wager.
Before you go, I've been told that Faber is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I've been told that for 6 months before he even touched an NHL sheet of ice. So I'm not worried about Brock Faber. I have sources that tell me he's going to be the real deal.
Is that a shot at Pat?
It's him. Right, Pat?
Go ahead, Pat.
I will buy both of you lunch.
Wait, what?
If.
Well, you guys can buy me lunch. I think Brock Faber.
Do I have to have the lunch with you two?
By the end of the series, he will have played the second or third most minutes for a defenseman for this team.
Okay.
By the end of the playoffs.
Well, I mean, he's
okay.
Barring Klingberg out of lineup, he's not going to get a whole lot of power play time. So, but 5-on-5 and PK, he could definitely.
Yep. I don't think
you think he's going to get elevated up from that third pairing then?
I do. I think
where?
late in the game. I think late in the game you're going to see him out there with Brodin. It would not shock me at all. We'll have to see how it plays out, but he's got to play game 1 first.
Well, Pat,
that'd be a hell of a pairing. But go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was going to say, Pat, obviously you've seen a lot of Brock Faber at the University of Minnesota. We've seen him World Juniors, Olympics. And watching him at the University of Minnesota, I thought to myself, this is a guy who can play in the NHL right now. But you never know until you get onto the ice in the NHL. Right. And I get he played a junior varsity Chicago Blackhawks team. And I get, the Nashville game, we played our own junior varsity version of a lineup in that game. But his skating, clearly he can skate with NHLers. That's not an issue. His defensive awareness, how smart he is, block shots. He has a great stick. Even in those areas, in a small sample size in 2 NHL games, you can see where he's better than a Merrill there. And he's not offensively where Klingberg is, but you can see he's got a better stick and better positioning than John Klingberg. To me, right away, I don't know what his ceiling is, because I don't know if he's just ever going to be a super high octane offensive guy. I could see him being a Jared Spurgeon type throughout at some point in his career.
Yeah, you know what? I put him in the same category as Brodin in terms of longevity, style. Not saying one's, that he's Jonas Brodin, but he's got that longevity of, every night what you're getting out of him, and that should make all Wild fans say, "Whew, Thank you. We know we're protected back there. We know what we know we got a great skater, great defender, great puck mover. We don't know what his upside is offensively.
In the last 90 seconds, I heard him compared to Jared Spurgeon and Jonas Brodin. So that tells me that you like what you see. But I think it's not only you, but also Dean Evison has said that too. I mean, he's trumpeting this kid, and he has no reason to do that. He's a young kid. He doesn't owe him very much, but he's seen him in 2 games now. Yep. And the fact that he was skating with Klingberg this morning on that third pair tells you what they think about him. And we had Bill Guerin on this morning and also sings his praises. I mean, obviously they think the sky is the limit with this kid, and I don't think there'll be any hesitation about putting him into game 1 and beyond because he's been that rock steady.
Yeah. Well, Falness, you're mocking our takes with this, and that's fine. But I will say, like, they're not putting him there out of desperation.
No,
right? This team, they have depth on the blue line. You've got a Merrill, who I haven't liked his last couple games, but overall he's had a good season, can kill penalties for you, bring size. Alex Goligoski is a seasoned veteran pro sitting on the bench. Kalen Addison, I know that's a whole nother topic we could have, but has played in the National Hockey League, has played in the playoffs before, good on the power play. Like, he's not there because we got nothing else and we're desperate here. Like, he's earned it over 3 quality NHL defensemen.
Yeah. Well, and his body of work at the University of Minnesota, of course, and working with Bob Motzko. But that's the beauty of it. You throw him in there, and if something doesn't work out, you got Goligoski waiting in the wings. You got Merrill. You've got these other great options waiting for you, and that's where that depth is going to play a role. And that's at the blue line, up front, and in goal. You've got depth that is definitely a weapon here for this Wild team.
Are we going to, Kevin and I today made our first round predictions. What are yours, Brandon?
Well, I don't think I can reveal that to you before we do our Paul Allen bet on Monday, can I?
Well, yeah, we can, because that's random drop.
I will say I've had a harder time with this year's playoffs, I think, than I have had in quite some time. I think there's so much parity in the league. I mean, you look at the East and all those teams are good. Even in the West, I mean, what's the difference between 1 through 6 in the West? I mean,
I have Seattle beating Colorado.
In 5 games.
In 5?
Not only beating him, he has them in 5 games. The defending Cup champs. No, Landeskog be damned. Still, to say that Kraken are going to beat the defending Cup champs in 5 games, they still have Rantanen, McKinnon, and some semblance of Makar.
Do you want to bet on that series, Pat?
Yeah. No, I bet he doesn't.
You take Seattle, I'll take Colorado.
Maybe.
This is also a podcast. People need to hear you.
Sure.
I do know in the East I like Carolina a lot. I would
have them losing.
You have them losing to the Islanders?
I do.
Well, I mean, that just shows you how much parity there is, right? I mean,
I don't like the Islanders at all. But
do you have the Rangers or the Devils?
Rangers.
I have the Devils.
Okay. I do too. I have the Devils as well.
Toronto, Tampa.
I'm going Toronto.
Yeah, good.
Me too.
Hey, thanks for treating me like a 5-year-old child there. Oh, good, Brandon. I'm going to pat you on the head.
Yeah.
Boston, Florida.
I mean, it's hard with the season Boston has had. It's hard to go against them. But I tell you, Florida, I think, is a little peskier of a wild card team than they deserve for how good of a season they had.
All right, let's move it along to who's your Stanley Cup final?
Well, but you didn't go to the Western Conference. How about the West? You did all the Eastern Conference teams. The West is where the juicy matchups are.
I'm going to go Colorado.
Okay.
I really like both Edmonton and Los Angeles. Disappointed they're both playing each other, but I will go with Edmonton. I think they're due for a breakthrough type year.
Vegas.
What is that series going to be, though? How good is that series going to be?
It is
Edmonton and LA, really? I'm taking Los Angeles, and I'm probably in the minority. I didn't realize that Fiala was hurt at this point, so that might be a little bit of a difference maker. Yeah, and if he's not available for the first round,
he's a big playoff goal scorer.
Maybe he's ready to turn over a new leaf. Still, that could be a difference maker in a series that I don't think is going to be that big of a, that there's going to be a lot to make it different. I'm still picking Los Angeles, but I think that series is going to be awesome. I think that'll be very Devils Rangers like.
Pat, I can bet you $1 million, I know who Kevin will take in the Wild Star Series.
Yeah.
I said for the Wild to get past them is what I said. For the Wild to get past the Stars, it has to go a long ways. And they need Joel Eriksson to emerge at some point. He's got to be the groundhog, sticks his head out of the hole,
So
and
do
feels
the
the
Wild,
shadow.
Kevin, do the Wild lose if Ek doesn't play?
I don't like their chances as much.
Wow.
If Ek plays, I think the Wild can take it in 7, but I don't like their chances without it. Well, who would? He's their best player. And I love Kirill Kaprizov. I love Jonas Brodin. Philip Gustafsson has been a lifesaver for this team. But Joel Eriksson is their most valuable player.
So
you just say he's their best player?
Yes. He's
nuts?
their most valuable. No, he's their most valuable player.
Well, you first said he was their best player.
He's their most valuable player. Kirill Kaprizov is their best player. He's their best
Eichel,
offensive threat.
what if Eichel was on the Wild?
Is he teammates with Tyler Ennis?
Kirill Kaprizov is a role player compared to Joel Eriksson, according to Kevin.
Joel Eriksson is their MVP. Do you disagree with that?
I love Joel Eriksson, and
he's their MVP.
He is one of the 5 most important players on the team. But maybe if Dallas sweeps Minnesota in 4, I know the team won without Kirill Kaprizov, but come on. Did you see this team score this year?
Wait. So who is the Wild's MVP? I'm not saying who's their best player. Who's their MVP?
97.
Okay, he's their MVP?
Yeah.
Okay.
Philip Gustafsson might be their MVP.
Let's move on to Winnipeg.
Kirill Kaprizov's their best player, and he's their MVP.
He's their best player. Joel Eriksson's their MVP.
No.
Let's move on to Winnipeg and Vegas. Brandon?
Winnipeg is such a weird team. I don't know which Winnipeg Jets team I'm going to get. I do think Winnipeg
Kevin thinks Hellebuck is Tradiak or Ken Dryden.
I think Connor Hellebuck is really, really good. And I could definitely see him stealing the series. I think Winnipeg is a big, heavy team, and like Vegas is the kind of team that's also big and heavy that can take on some of the smaller teams, and Winnipeg is not going to be thrown off physically from them. And I think they're kind of built for a playoff style series. They're just so erratic. Like I could see Winnipeg being swept in 4, and I could see Winnipeg winning in 6 or 7. I have no idea what Jets team is going to come out, but I would give Winnipeg a chance against Vegas.
As do I.
Has Jack Eichel done it in the playoffs?
No, he's not. This is his first trip to the playoffs, and he's an unproven commodity. He's no Joel Eriksson.
By the way, something called Kyle Mileski says the most valuable player is Brodin.
In the running. You said top 5 guy for sure.
I mean, the amazing thing is the team went through a stretch without Kaprizov and won. They went a stretch without Brodin and won. I mean,
they had to win without everyone at some point in this year. They've lost all their important players, and they were able to survive and got 3rd place in the Central Division. And within a couple of weeks, we're fighting for the top spot in the Western Conference. So it's amazing what they've been able to cobble together.
All right,
Brandon, who do you have in the Cup final?
I'm taking Carolina and Edmonton. You're not going to pat me on the head?
No, that's pretty good.
My owner?
That's good. I have Edmonton, Boston.
Edmonton, Boston? Okay. Kevin?
Kings, Bruins.
All right. Can you still stay around for a little while, Kevin, or you got to go?
I can hang out for a little bit.
All right. I'm going to do a quick read, and then we'll get right back to you and talk some Minnesota Wild stuff. Before we get back to Kevin and Pat, I want to talk to you about our sponsor on Beyond the Pod. That would be Soda6.com. Get your original Minnesota sports-inspired goods at Soda6.com. All of their apparel screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. You'll love it. We're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. So use the code KFAN for 15% off. That is Sodastick.com. Original Minnesota sports-inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. Thanks for making all the noise. Oh, what happened there? Hold on. Now we're good. All right. We are getting some comments that we haven't gotten a whole lot to, and I'd like to get to some of the comments right now. This one is from Barb Rule, Pat and Kevin. She says, what is your level of confidence? Hey, Kevin, we can hear those. We can hear that really loud. What is your level of confidence that Dean will be quicker to make adjustments in game? Berube definitely was better with that in last year's first round.
I don't know if Berube was better than that in game. I'd have to know what Barb was talking about. I will say, I think he'll learn when a momentum swing is changing, and if he needs to make a change lineup wise or goaltending wise, if they need a spark, I think they'll do a better job of that this year than they did last year.
I think the whole thing was a learning experience for everyone involved last year, including the coaching staff. And I think as the need arises, my hope is that they would adjust accordingly. So I would have zero problem with my trust in them going forward.
Some of that stuff gets really magnified in a playoff series. I think a lot of that was a lot of the coaching stuff, especially the goaltending decision, was very overblown. But people want to send their rage somewhere, and when a team's not losing, they want to be at one direction as opposed to spreading it to everywhere. So
Talbot and his wife didn't help that any. I mean, they've kind of fanned that fire as well.
No.
Hey, listen, Minnesota was not playing great when they entered the playoffs a year ago. When they were on their game, their forecheck was the best in the league, and they were running out, 3 lines, sometimes 4 lines, and just smothering teams and making it really, really hard. And that part of their game, they weren't on pucks. They didn't make it hard for the other team to get out of their zone. Their power play was atrocious. The penalty kill was atrocious, and so they kind of lost their way, and I don't think they felt right going into the playoffs, and that was my estimation of it anyway.
And the penalty kill has been much better this year, so at least going into the playoff series.
Yeah,
power play kind of slowed down towards the end of the year, and I think a lot of that had to do with Kirill Kaprizov not in the lineup. We'll see if they can regain their earlier season magic when it comes to the power play. Obviously, there's going to be a big topic of conversation, Kevin. Darren Thurston says, do the Wild play Gus first game and then flop to Fleury either game 2 or 3? Might be good to keep both sharp. So question for you, Kevin. Who do you start game 1? And then are you one of those that you want to ride the hot goalie for a while? Do you already have a set rotation in mind? I mean, how do you approach the goaltending situation?
I have no inside information, but in my opinion, Philip Gustafson has earned the start in game number 1. And if he has an awesome game in game number 1, there's no doubt in my mind he plays in game number 2. If he plays great in game 1, why would you switch and just do it because you're on a rotating system? In my opinion, Gustafson starts game 1. If he earns the start in game 2, he starts game 2 in Dallas. If not, then you bring in the Flower, the future Hall of Famer, and you go with Marc-Andre Fleury. But I think however game 1 goes dictates what happens in game 2.
I will say, Pat, we don't know if Gustafson can do this for 6-7 games in a row because he hasn't had to do that all year. I mean, they've been in a rotation all year. They've been a 1A, 1B. Now, he has never dropped off at any point and has been unbelievable all season long, and I have confidence in him. But it's playoff lights, the big bright lights coming on for the first time. It's, can you be the man? Can you do this back-to-back consecutively? He hasn't had to do any of this, and so I do wonder if they plan on kind of having a rotation moving in, or if, like Kevin says, you start Gus game 1 and, if he shuts them out or they win 3-1, you just got to keep riding with them.
Sometimes goalies change when they are given the con, when they are given that thing, and and all of a sudden they feel like they have to make the save. It's been a comfortable rotation. This is where your coaching really comes in. Of reading what your goaltenders, their mannerisms, how they're talking, how they're feeling, and then you make that decision. Kevin, there's validity there to, hey, you win game 1 and he plays well, you go back with him in game 2. Does Gustafson want the net every game? There's that comfort level of, I've got the Flower here too. So I don't know. Whoever goes game 1, I hope they win, and then we go on to game 2 and worry about it then.
All right, this question's for both of you, but Pat, you specifically, I think you'll like this question probably the most out of any all night, just because of who it's coming from. It's from Lindsay Baker. She says, Who is an under-the-radar player that could have the biggest impact on this series? What a bright, intelligent question that is.
Hey, it's my daughter. That's my daughter, Lindsay. Go to bed. No. You know what? Under the radar would be a Gustav Nyquist, right? I mean,
it's a good answer.
We've only seen him in 2 games. He's got a lot of skill. He's not a burner, but he's really good around the net. Can he be the guy that gets you the unexpected goal? And that's what you brought him in here for, because you needed more skill in your top 9. Is he going to come through for you? We've seen Johansson. We know what he can do. Boldy's not.
Does Johansson count as an under the radar player?
No. Not anymore. Not anymore. I don't think, because he's shown it. There's no radar that he's on the radar. We know how good he's been, but I think a guy like Nyquist is someone we should keep an eye on.
My answer would be anyone on that 4th line, because I think they're going to have an impact on this series, whether it be a doer, is that not considered under the radar?
No, I don't know.
That's very under the radar.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much they'll play.
No, I get that, but like Dewar and Duhaime, for example, especially on the penalty kill, I love watching Dewar play. He's always moving his legs. I think he'll have an impact in some way, shape, or form. Duhaime as well. Reeves, again, he doesn't have to be on the ice to have an impact. He's up here already, and I think that's also a way he can have an impact on this series.
I do wonder what kind of impact he'll have on this series. And we'll move on to that in a second, because you were talking about the under-the-radar players. You brought up Nyquist, Pat. That line just seems like a weird line to me, though, right? I mean, Foligno is, let's face it, he's not had a great year. Now, he can jump into the playoffs and change things, but he's been a disappointment this season. Sam Steele's been in and out of the lineup. I'll tell you what, since Steele sat for a long time and has come back and played a couple games, I've kind of liked his game a little bit. He's played with speed. He's played with a sense of urgency. I think he knows, especially now with this Eriksson neck injury, like this is a great opportunity for him. He doesn't know how many more opportunities he's going to get moving forward.
Right. And Brandon, I think when he got put up with Zuccarello and Kaprizov, I think he was afraid to make a mistake. I think he wanted to stay there, but he didn't. He kind of just stopped playing.
I just think he can't play at that skill level, right? I
mean, maybe that could be.
He just can't play with those two.
It could be. Yeah.
They think the game a certain way.
Yeah. That's very true. And it took Hartman a little bit of time to understand how those two operate together. But
to my original statement, I like Nyquist, but the line he's on with, you don't know what you're going to get out of Sam Steele. You don't know, Foligno's not had a great year. It seems like a just kind of hodgepodge put together line. I do wonder if maybe Oscar Sundqvist comes back at some point in the series, and who goes out. Obviously, we'll find out after the first game if someone's playing poorly. That's who he's going to take out. But looking ahead of time, I'm just trying to figure out where you'd slot a guy like that, if at all.
Well, I said it today, and I'll say it again now. I think Reeves is definitely in game 1 just to be a tone setter, whether it be, don't try anything. Don't start to run us because you will pay the price for it. And so I think once that is established, and if a Sundqvist is healthy, I think he slides in for Reeves because he can kill penalties. He can be a net presence on the power play if X not there. So I think Sundqvist would add a little bit more than Ryan Reeves, but I think Reeves has to play game 1 just to make sure that things are settled, if that makes sense.
All right, Kevin. Laurie Jones says, Klingberg worries me. He can cost you the game. If he does, will Dean pull him?
We talked about this morning, too. His offensive upside almost sometimes is outweighed by the fact that he has those liabilities, and we've seen those. Some of the things that he decides, the decisions that he makes when the puck is on his stick or in his vicinity, you're like, what are you thinking? And it's like Dumba times 20. And there's a lot of people, Dumba detractors out there, and you got to be looking at Klingberg going, oh, my God. But what he can do on the power play offsets that at least a little bit. I think he's on probably a short leash because you have other great options. If Klingberg isn't getting the job done, go to option A, B, or C. But My guess is he gets the start right out of the gate.
You don't really have power play options. I mean, you have options to replace him 5-on-5, but you don't really have, unless you want to go the Kalen Addison route, and they ain't going that route.
No chance.
It doesn't look like it.
Here's the easy solution. You play 5D a lot, and you have Klingberg there as a power play. And the odd man on the, you put him out strategically. You got to draw in the offensive zone, throw him out there, and then let him know, okay, get off in at the proper time. But I think you can, you can coach your D pretty well, and if you have to use 5 majority of the time, that's okay.
Well, I just wonder what it is that's going on there, because the offensive upside is so great with him, and he's an established veteran, but there's just these like mind farts that go on in the middle of the game with him, and you look at it and you go, is he a rookie? No, he's an established veteran in the league, and why he comes up with some of these thought processes doesn't make sense to me.
You do wonder, where those brain farts come from sometimes. The good thing is he's played in the playoffs before. He's succeeded in the playoffs. He's been to a Stanley Cup final. He's had he's had a series clinching game-winning goal before. He's facing his former team like some of his issues sometimes just seems focus related, and I'd have to think if you can't be focused against your former team in a first round of the playoffs. But to Pat's point, he is a guy that, depending on how the game's going, right? If you are up a goal with 10 minutes left in the third period, well, you don't have to throw him out there as much, and you can go 5D. If you're down a goal with 10 minutes in the third period, well, guess what? He's a guy you want to have on your team and gives you a lot of high offensive opportunities. So, Pat, I still, now is not the time to experiment with it. I still thought maybe playing him with Jonas Brodin would have been the best thing for him, a guy who's just defensively stable. And I know Brodin was injured for a stretch there. And maybe a Brock Faber with him might actually help a little bit, as opposed to a Klingberg who's a little slower defensively and plays a completely different style than Brock Faber.
I think that
you said Klingberg. Yeah, we know what you meant. You meant Merrill.
I meant Merrill. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Faber will help Klingberg. I think Faber, he's not going to take a lot of chances. He's going to play a really smart game, and maybe that's why they paired Klingberg and Faber together. And because they know that potentially there's going to be some errors back there by him.
I like your top two pairs, though. I don't screw with that. I know what you're saying with Brodin and Klingberg. You're right. The potential there is phenomenal. But I like what you have established with Middleton and Spurgeon. I like the Brodin, and it's like an old pair of shoes. It just fits. It's comfortable. Leave it alone. And then if you want to screw around with the third pair, absolutely. Have fun. Go at it.
My old pair of shoes are all worn down with holes in them. I don't know what kind of pair of shoes you have that are super comfortable.
You guys will say the opposite of everything I say. It's like 2 against 1 here.
That's how I know. That's how
2
I know
against 1 here.
That's how I know I'm on the right side. I just take the opposite of you.
Right.
Yeah, amen.
Couple more questions. This one comes from R. Sonnensen Outdoors. Suter and Reeves have a pass. Time to get under his skin. I guess I'm not super familiar with the pass of Suter and Reeves. Do you got any history on that, Kevin?
There's just been a little bit. They've run into each other. Suter has an issue with Reeves, I think, more than vice versa. So that's great. Play upon that. More than that, I mean, there's, and I'm sure you guys saw the YouTube thing where Jamie Benn was talking about Ryan Reeves from, I think, like 2019. Play off of that. Get inside of Jamie Benn. Ryan Suter, for sure. That's great. Get in under his skin. But Jamie Benn is playing like Jamie Benn of like 10 years ago. He's not playing at the Jamie Benn of like 2 or 3 years ago. He's playing like a young Jamie Benn. And if you can get under his skin, because you can rattle that guy's cage. He's a loose cannon. And if you get a chance to rattle him, do it. And Ryan Reeves might be the guy that can pick that.
I don't want Ryan Reeves on the ice against him, though. That's the fatal flaw there.
No, but if you get him to retaliate for some dumb reason, then you get him off the ice. Meaning Jamie Benn.
Ryan Hartman has to be the kind of guy that gets under Jamie Benn's. And let's face it, Hartman's had that ability at times. Sometimes he gets too emotional himself and puts himself in a bad spot. He's always that guy who's got to play on the line a little bit. And what Ryan Hartman you're going to get in this series in terms of the emotional standpoint, I don't know. But that's the kind of guy who's got to get under. And Joel Eriksson Ek used to be that kind of guy that could get under Ben's skin.
Yeah.
unfortunately, we don't have them. Someone just called YouTube user says, Freddie has been great and will continue to have a high impact on the playoffs. I want to know your guys' opinion.
He better.
I got to see it because he was invisible against St. Louis a year ago. Absolutely invisible. I thought the wear and tear, the close checking. He didn't make any plays at all. And maybe he's a better player than he was a year ago. I know they love him. And he serves a purpose, but it's very concerning to me that he's your number 2 center entering the playoffs. And
who would you pick over him?
Joel Eriksson Ek.
Well, no, yeah, he's not available. Who would you use now though with him not available?
Pat's not saying he would pick someone else over him. He's just saying he's concerned that that's what we have to have.
Yeah, and trust me, I like Freddie Gaudreau in a bottom 9, and I think what, you're not going to get scored on. He's going to play there, but if you're going to say, okay, create in a playoff situation where you're getting hit every 2 seconds, maybe that'll change this year.
Well, I'm not sure his style of play fits well with the playoffs.
Yeah.
I think is your point, Pat, right?
Yeah.
It's much more tighter, physical, and he's just not that player. Yep. The other advantage he brings you is shootouts, which is non-existent in the playoffs, the postseason. And with Eriksson Ek out, he kind of has to be your shutdown center.
Yeah. Well,
can you do it? I don't know.
Your shutdown center is your second line. I mean, you're looking to create and get some offense out of them. So, please come back, Ek. Please come back.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't your best case scenario for sure. You hate being without, in my opinion, the team's MVP. But that means Freddie Gaudreau has to step into an elevated role, and that means playing the second line center. And not only that, but he's going to have to fill a lot of those voids left vacant by Joel Eriksson Ek. I hope he can elevate his game to that level. I don't think he can be a Joel Eriksson Ek light, but that's the situation you're set into.
What do you guys think of the contract he signed this week? Because I look at the $2.1 million AAV and I go, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can give that guy 5 years. And I guess I get to have him at that low of an AAV. You had to do the 5 years. But I don't like committing that long to a bottom 6 forward.
Well,
I love that contract.
But you know what? If you look at it projected out, they hope the cap goes up. They are going to be getting a lot of money, and the 2.1 for let's call him a 4th line center in 2 years, I think will be market value. So, because what guys are making $950 now, that's going to go up. So,
3-4 years from now, that'll be peanuts. I don't think you'll even think anything. You'll blink at it.
I hope that's the case. That's just
me too.
It's a long extension for
it is
a guy that has had moments, but I still think ultimately, like, you can kind of replace a guy like that.
Yeah, agree.
How about last one for the night from MF Gusto? He says Zuck needs to bust out of his funk. There's no doubt Matt Zuccarello has been a different player. I think a lot of that is no Kirill Kaprizov, and would think they'd be able to pick up the chemistry pretty quickly here. But what do you guys think of Zuccarello and his importance in the series?
There's no doubt he's your top line. He's your power play. He's a point producer, and you have to produce if you are going to win in the role that he is in. I don't know if he's playing with an injury. I think everyone has some, dinged up somehow. Is there something else going on with him? I don't know. Kevin, you might know.
I don't know.
What?
No, I don't know that. He's the yin to Kaprizov's yang. I mean, for Kaprizov to have success and for the Wild to have success, Zuccarello's got to have success. He started out okay in the first 13 games that Kaprizov missed with his lower body injury. First couple of games he was fine, and then he dove into the bottom of the canyon and hasn't been the same since. The hope is once they start connecting again and sharing coffees and passing the puck back and forth, I think they'll regain their Sedin magic, but I guess we won't know until we do. But I promise you, if the Wild have any success and if Kaprizov has success, 36 is going to be on the other end of the receiving, on the other end of setting them up for sure.
Kevin, really appreciate your time tonight. I was expecting 0 minutes from you. I got about 45.
Hey!
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll be right there, honey. Yeah, I got to go. I got to put my kids to bed. Thanks, boys.
Bye.
Kevin.
All right, Kevin Falness. You can hear him on the Wild Radio Network as they begin postseason play Monday night against the Dallas Stars. 8:30, which probably also means like 8:50 start. But,
yeah, 8:50 start. Yep.
Pat, kind of a weird episode. Do you have any stick taps in you?
I do, and,
okay.
and I'm wearing it. Okay. Do you see what I'm wearing tonight? It's blue. You probably can't see the lettering. The lettering says AF.
Air Force?
That's the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
And my stick tap tonight is to that gentleman, the head coach of the Air Force Falcons, Frank Serratori. I ran into him. Not a better conversation. I think he should be the commissioner of college hockey when he retires from coaching. But I opened the mail, and this is in it. So I thank him.
That's a good looking shirt.
It's a nice pullover. Yeah.
Tell him to send one my way. I like that.
Yeah, I know. Well, if you're nice, I can. I know him now. No. But anyway, my stick tap is to Frank Serratori.
There's no doubt about his passion for hockey and college
not
hockey.
At all.
I'm also going to give my stick tap to a head coach in college hockey. That would be the head coach of Quinnipiac, Ran Pecknold. He was named the USCHO Coach of the Year. He led Quinnipiac to a 34-4-3 record, and of course that national championship. And there was no doubt watching that game, Pat, that was a well-coached hockey team.
Yep, and they earned the victory, and you tip your hat to them. Congratulations, Rand.
All right, Pat. Appreciate your time as always, and we'll talk to you next week on Beyond the Pod, and probably talk to you more as we have a Wild Stars playoff series.
Sounds great. Look forward to it.
Thought
Thanks,
I lost
Brandon.
it for a second. All right, thanks, Pat. He's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Mileski. Thank you so much for watching our live Beyond the Pod tonight on the KFN social channels. You can also listen to this podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Talk to you next week. Bye.